Have you ever wondered why some people, though good and moral, are constantly crushed by the world around them, and why others, who bend or break rules, flourish endlessly? Today we are going to uncover the hidden cost of morality, the dangerous price paid by those who cling to ethics in a world ruled by cunning and strategy. History is filled with noble souls who believe that virtue alone could protect them. Yet as we study their rise and fall, we see a harsh reality. Morality, while admirable, can be fatal in the corridors of power. Today, we examine the secret truth Machiavelli revealed centuries ago: why adhering to morality may cost you more than you ever imagined. Let us begin with a truth that many refuse to acknowledge, a truth that those who cling to virtue often find bitter and unbearable. Morality and power are seldom companions. The man who rules with unyielding principle, who believes that honesty, integrity, and fairness alone will shield him from harm, is a man walking a narrow and dangerous path. History is filled with princes, generals, and statesmen who trusted in virtue, and yet, despite their noble intentions, they fell. They fell not because they lacked courage or wisdom, but because they refused to recognize a fundamental law: the world does not reward virtue in isolation. Consider the prince who greets every courtier with kindness, who offers counsel freely, who never takes advantage of weakness. In the privacy of his chambers, he believes that his goodness makes him invincible, that his honor will protect him from betrayal. But outside, in the shadowed corridors of power, others do not share this sentiment. They do not consider kindness an asset. They see it as a vulnerability, a gap to be exploited, a flaw to be manipulated. The world, as it truly operates, rewards those who can seize opportunities without hesitation, even when such actions are distasteful to the conscience. Virtue in the eyes of the moral man is a shield. In the eyes of the cunning man, it is a mark. To adhere strictly to ethical codes is to bind one's hands while others wield weapons. Every act of mercy may be interpreted as weakness. Every delay to honor a promise may be seized by a rival as indecision. The moral leader may believe that his intentions are pure, but intentions alone do not protect him from the harsh realities of ambition, envy, and deceit. Morality has a cost, and this cost is often paid in influence, territory, and authority. Yet, the temptation to remain virtuous is powerful, because virtue is celebrated in stories, in poetry, in the lessons of the past. It is said that a good ruler is loved by his people, and indeed, he may be. He may be praised in public, remembered fondly in history. But love, though pleasing to the heart, is fragile when tested by the ambitions of others. Those who wield power without the burden of morality can strike decisively, bending circumstance to their will, while the virtuous man hesitates, doubts, and prays for goodwill to protect him. Observe the histories of men who fell because they could not reconcile their morality with necessity. They surrounded themselves with flatterers who reflected their ideals rather than reality. They hesitated at the moment of action, reluctant to betray trust, to punish the guilty, or to seize what was within their grasp. And as they hesitated, their enemies advanced. Opportunities vanished like smoke, and rivals who understood the balance of cunning and action prospered. This is the cruel calculus of power. The price of morality is measured not by conscience alone, but by survival. Even the act of deciding when to act is fraught with peril. A man of principle may say, "I will not betray a promise even if my rival deceives me." This is noble, but it is also dangerous. A promise in isolation does not secure loyalty, it only secures the expectation of reciprocity, and in the absence of reciprocity, the man of principle stands exposed, while the opportunist exploits every lapse, every hesitation, every moral restraint. Morality, in the theater of power, is a luxury that few can afford without peril. Yet, this is not to say that virtue has no role at all. To appear moral can be a strategic act, a mask that deceives observers and lulls opponents into underestimating one's resolve. But the mistake of the moral man is to mistake appearance for immunity, to believe that acting rightly will always protect him, is to invite betrayal. History teaches that leaders who act with a rigid moral compass often find themselves outmaneuvered by those who act with flexibility, who understand that circumstances sometimes demand actions that conscience may resist. The true art of leadership is to balance morality with pragmatism, to know when principle serves and when it hinders, to recognize that power is preserved not by the purity of intent, but by the effectiveness of action. The moral man clings to ideals as if they were shields against the ambitions of others, yet every ideal carries weight, and every weight slows the hand that must act decisively. In contrast, the shrewd leader moves unencumbered, taking advantage of every weakness, exploiting every error, and bending events to his will. He does not abandon virtue entirely, but he uses it with caution, knowing when it can be a tool and when it must be set aside. To rule effectively, to navigate the treacherous waters of ambition and rivalry, one must accept a bitter reality. Morality is not free. It exacts a toll in lost opportunities, in vulnerability, in the erosion of power. Those who cling to it blindly may find themselves admired in memory, but powerless in the present. The wise understand that the measure of a leader is not in his adherence to principle, but in his ability to act, to decide, and to survive in a world that does not operate on ideals alone. Even the perception of morality can be weaponized. A leader who shows kindness may inspire loyalty, but if the world perceives weakness beneath this kindness, that same virtue becomes a liability. Allies may doubt commitment, enemies may test limits, and the virtuous man may find that his noble gestures invite exploitation rather than respect. Morality, when untempered by strategy, exposes rather than protects. And so, the first lesson is laid bare. In the contest for power, virtue and survival are often at odds. To succeed, one must recognize that morality carries a cost, sometimes a steep and unforgiving cost, and that to ignore this truth is to invite failure. Now, let us confront a misconception so widely believed that it lulls even the wisest into danger, the belief that morality guarantees safety. Many men, when they ascend to power, cling to the notion that ethical behavior will shield them from harm, that honesty ensures loyalty, and that kindness preserves alliances. They act as though virtue is a fortress, walls so strong that no ambition, deceit, or treachery can penetrate. Yet history, relentless and unforgiving, tells a far harsher story. Moral integrity, when relied upon as a shield, can be an illusion, a dangerous mirage in the desert of politics. Consider the man who trusts entirely in his own virtue. He believes that his good intentions will disarm rivals, that his fair conduct will inspire loyalty, that his ethical restraint will protect him from betrayal. He surrounds himself with those who mirror his ideals, who affirm that honesty and righteousness are sufficient for survival. And for a time he may feel secure. He may feel as though he stands upon solid ground. Yet beneath him, the foundation is shifting. The world does not operate according to principles. It operates according to opportunity. Those who are willing to act without hesitation, who are willing to exploit weakness and seize advantage, move unseen while the virtuous man deliberates and trusts. The illusion of ethical security is seductive because it appeals to the conscience. It flatters the mind to believe that righteousness will guard against the slings and arrows of ambition. But consider the consequence of misplaced trust. When a rival tests the limits of morality, when an ally betrays under the guise of friendship, the man who clings to ethics is exposed. He hesitates when action is required, constrained by promises, limited by principle, and trapped by his own belief that the world will honor his morality. This is the peril that Machiavelli warns of. To trust virtue as armor is to enter a battle unprepared, wielding ideals instead of weapons. History is littered with examples of those who fell because they believed in the protective power of ethics. Princes who refused to deceive, generals who would not betray, counselors who would not manipulate, all perished when confronted with rivals unburdened by such constraints. The moral man believes that he is immune to the treacheries of others. Yet he is most vulnerable precisely because he trusts in what others do not value. The ethical man assumes reciprocity, the cunning man exploits it. Trusting morality as security is to mistake expectation for reality, and reality seldom aligns with expectation. Even those who act publicly with virtue may discover that appearances alone do not protect them. A leader may cultivate a reputation for fairness, generosity, and honesty, thinking that such a reputation will discourage attacks and ensure loyalty. Yet perception can be deceiving. Enemies test the limits of kindness, allies probe the boundaries of patience, and the virtuous facade may crumble under the pressure of ambition. Morality may inspire admiration, but admiration does not prevent betrayal, nor does it compel action. The illusion lies in mistaking approval for security and goodwill for defense. Furthermore, the danger lies not only in external threats, but also in internal hesitation. The moral man is constrained by conscience, forced to measure every decision against the yardstick of ethical correctness. Every moment of doubt, every delay to honor principle, creates a gap in which opportunity or danger can enter. Meanwhile, those who act with pragmatic ruthlessness do not pause, do not waver, and do not ask if their actions are fair. They strike decisively, guided by results rather than ideals, and the moral man is left scrambling, trying to defend what he believes should have been protected by virtue alone. The illusion of ethical security also blinds men to the necessity of vigilance. Believing that morality itself will deter treachery, a leader may neglect intelligence, oversight, and strategy. He assumes that others will act honorably because he does, forgetting that human ambition is rarely restrained by principle. To rely on morality as a shield is to invite surprise, to leave the flank unguarded, to underestimate the cunning of those who measure success by outcome rather than intent. Yet this is not a call to abandon virtue entirely. The shrewd leader understands that morality has value, but its value is tactical, not absolute. Ethical behavior can be wielded to influence perception, to maintain public trust, and to consolidate alliances, but never to the extent that it compromises action. The wise recognize that morality is a tool, not a fortress, and that security in power is not granted by the purity of the soul, but by the ability to anticipate, to act, and to defend oneself when others disregard virtue entirely. The greatest peril is the false comfort that morality provides. The man who believes himself safe because he has acted rightly is most exposed to treachery, for he underestimates the cunning of those who operate without such restraint. Ethics alone do not deter ambition, nor do they prevent betrayal, nor do they grant immunity from the harsh necessities of leadership. Machiavelli teaches that the true protector of a ruler is neither virtue nor conscience, but foresight, decisiveness, and the understanding that the world rewards not morality, but effectiveness. To cling blindly to the belief that moral behavior guarantees security is to walk willingly into the jaws of danger. One may be praised in tales, honored in memory, admired by poets, yet powerless in the present, vulnerable to every hand that acts without restraint. This is the bitter lesson that many refuse to learn, that ethical security is an illusion, and that the wise must navigate the world with eyes open, prepared to act when virtue alone will not suffice. Let us now turn to a truth that many shrink from, a truth cloaked in discomfort and yet unavoidable for those who wish to wield power effectively. There are times when morality must yield to strategy. This is not the surrender of virtue for vice, but the recognition that in the theater of power, the stakes are survival and dominion, and survival does not always bow to ethics. Machiavelli teaches that a ruler, a general, or a statesman who refuses to act beyond the confines of conventional morality invites disaster. For the world is not governed by ideals, it is governed by outcomes, by the consequences of action, and by the capacity to bend